So it has been a crazy month for D&D content creators online. A lot has been happening. And let me tell you, it hasn't all been good. Because first we found out that massive Dungeons & Dragons YouTubers and content creators are being forced to quit covering Dungeons & Dragons on YouTube because their channels are being killed. That's the involuntary kind of killed. And these aren't small YouTube channels either. These are some of the biggest D&D content creators around, like for example, How to Be a Great GM, who has been an institution on the platform for years. And if that wasn't bad enough, things then got even worse, because terrifying new data has just emerged about Dungeons & Dragons specifically, showing that potentially no matter how big they are, D&D content online seems to be dying overall. And if this trend keeps up, by 2026, there could be no more D&D content online ever. So say goodbye to Matt Mercer, Matt Colville, Ginny D, Professor DM, Dungeon Dudes, Pointy Hat, and more. Because they're all being sent to that farm that Aunt Clarice went to in 06. Remember that? Remember the farm? Well, she never went to a farm, kid. She was flushed down the toilet. Still, I'm just glad that I'm not a Dungeons & Dragons content creator. Would sure suck to be one of those guys right now. Ah, shit. Okay, so what the hell is going on? Well, personally, I have a big investment in this topic for obvious reasons, so I've been looking into it, and it's not looking great. So firstly, it's important to note that this scandal isn't just a few D&D YouTubers and content creators deciding to retire because they have made millions of dollars on the back of doing a top 5 D&D races video that went super viral. Which, by the way, totally irrelevant video, no need to make it, everyone knows bitches want gnomes. Can't keep away from the Rumpelstiltskinks. No, instead it's that many great YouTubers who cover or covered D&D, people that have in some cases got hundreds of thousands of followers, have been forced to quit making D&D content online because YouTube has simply stopped showing their content to new people and their existing audience has dwindled away to nothing. We're talking about channels with upwards of 200,000 subscribers getting views of only a couple thousand or even just 100 or so in some cases. Which, to be real, is not a lot on YouTube. It's just not sustainable. And it's making me very nervous about my comparably lesser 50,000 subscribers. So, you know, please subscribe. I don't want to be flushed like Aunt Clarice. I've been down the sewers. It's not pleasant down there. Now, this topic really first kicked off when Guy from How to Be a Great GM published his vinyl video on his D&D YouTube channel this month. And in it, he claimed that YouTube themselves told him that his channel covering D&D Dungeon Master advice is basically dead in the water and that he needs to find a whole new niche if he wants to make a living on the YouTube platform, which honestly is kind of weird for them to say. In fact, I didn't even know that there was a person at YouTube that you could speak to. I thought it was bots all the way down, like my local supermarket. They can pretend to be real all they want, but I know they're not. I don't care what the doctor says. But according to Guy, YouTube told him that his channel was basically doomed. D&D Dungeon Master advice? Get the heck out of here. You have to do Willy Wonka 24/7 streams. I don't know what's big on YouTube. So he has taken their advice and he has quit making his DM advice YouTube channel and started up a channel covering Star Trek instead. But Guy isn't the first D&D channel to have fallen. There's a lot more too. He's just the second tower. WebDM, for example, a channel who almost single-handedly got me through COVID, also stopped producing content a while back, which really sucked because I really enjoyed their format. Chicken 20 is gone now too. Man Shorts recently announced that he is quitting. Indestructible Boy has announced that he is stepping away from TTRPG content full-time. This is, I'm afraid to say, now a thing as we go into 2025. D&D YouTube content is kinda in a really bad place. It seems like D&D YouTube content is just no longer welcome on the elephant graveyard that is YouTube. And it's an elephant graveyard, not just because of all the dead channels lying around, but also all those hyenas are increasingly prowling about and they seem to be eating very well these days. And what I've mentioned are just the D&D channels that have disappeared permanently. There's plenty more that are on life support, or they used to get tons of views and now they really struggle. In the RPG niche overall, views seem to be down across the board, especially after the OGL scandal from a few years back from Hasbro, when, to be honest, that inflated views for everyone. D&D on YouTube now is looking a bit grim, and it has coincided with a general distaste for Hasbro in the overall player base, which I say coincided. I don't think that's coincidental. I think that Hasbro have genuinely hurt the RPG hobby with their actions, and that's being fed over into content creators. Unfortunately, though, even if Hasbro were to stop being assholes tomorrow, which they're not, they recently decided to get into gambling, so they're definitely not. Unfortunately, it's looking like things are about to get a whole lot worse, because new data has just been compiled that suggests that the entire D&D niche for content creation is on the way out. And let me tell you, folk, the numbers don't lie. So as someone that covers news and writes essays about the RPG industry, that's terrifying. D&D is a lot of that RPG industry, so I'm not sure how things will look without it. Okay, so this new data I'm referring to is from a website called Tabletop Analytics. They basically track all the numbers and dollars around various tabletop fundraisers, but what I want to look at was compiled specifically by MT Black Games, who have created a bunch of 5th edition supplement books. Now, this was brought to my attention by the RPG YouTuber Indestructiboy, whose channel is linked below, and he has also just stepped away from creating TTRPG content full time, so I'm guessing that the data isn't great for us. Kind of a bad sign. But to summarize it, Tabletop Analytics has shown this. In 2023, of the most successfully crowdfunded TTRPG projects, 43 of 105, so just under half of them, were designed for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. In 2024, however, this number has shrunk dramatically to instead be only 22 of 106. So that's like a drop of nearly 50% in the course of a single year. And as a content creator online, I look at those numbers, and if I was focused on Dungeons and Dragons with my channel, I would be terrified. Now, obviously, there's a lot of caveats to this data. For example, it's a single year, though that said, 2024 is the launch of the new 5.5 edition of D&D, so I would have expected like way more hype and new projects and Kickstarters to be popping off in 2024 on the back of all the hype and excitement for that game, which I'm still waiting for all that to arrive. Likewise, this data only accounts for crowdfunding sites like Kickstarter and BackerKit, and not retail websites like DriveThruRPG, DM's Guild, or otherwise. However, Indestructiboy has said that this data actually tracks with exactly what he and other publishers that he's spoken with have been seeing on storefronts as well. Dungeons & Dragons is down across the board. So taking that data into account, it increasingly seems likely that the rumors of extremely low sales of the new Dungeons & Dragons edition, you remember the ones that we heard about last month, they might actually be true. And if so, then that is really worrying. Because if the new, not yes quite so maybe edition of Dungeons & Dragons is not taking off, then things are looking really bad for the health of Dungeons & Dragons the game. Now, just let me take off my high hat and talk turkey. I think this is a trend that is here to stay, and even get worse for D&D. And it is going to have a massive impact on the industry and on content creators, YouTubers, and people who have built their lives around Dungeons & Dragons existing and being popular. Things are going to be really bad going forward, you guys. Because ultimately, if less people are playing Dungeons & Dragons, thinking about Dungeons & Dragons, they will want to watch less content about Dungeons & Dragons. They will buy less content for Dungeons & Dragons, and they will follow less channels that cover Dungeons & Dragons. And I think we're starting to see that now on YouTube as a canary in the coal mine, because ultimately, the YouTube algorithm, it's just the audience, you guys. People click and watch things that they want to see. Remember when online videos were all about cats? I sure do. Well, now they're about people eating snow and AI-generated slop and vacuuming channels designed to get around the porn filters. No one else's feed, just mine. And creators are just going to have to keep up with all that. If they want to keep making content in the RPG market, well then we're just gonna have to create content for that market as it comes to exist if, we want to keep producing content. It's easy to say, but it's really hard to do, especially considering how hard it is to eke out a living on YouTube while also keeping your integrity as it is. And I've already thrown out all my integrity. For example, I made half as much this year as I did the year before, and I got double the views, which, if you do the math, is really bad numbers financially. My accountant, not happy. Only thanks to Patreon that I can keep this all going. So, support creators, and, I'll take your money. Discord's gotta eat. So things are getting harder for YouTubers, but if I dare, this data ain't all bad. There are actual upsides to what's going on here, to this new knowledge, because while Dungeons and Dragons might be increasingly struggling in the next few years, independent games are starting to explode in popularity comparatively. Because if we look back at those numbers, the actual physical releases have not decreased, just the Dungeons and Dragons focused ones. So this is actually really good for the overall health of the hobby. Hopefully, if this trend continues, then in a few years, the overall RPG industry might look a lot less like the extremely unhealthy wargaming market, which is dominated by a single franchise, Warhammer, and hopefully more like the video game industry. Healthy video game industry. Okay, not like in the cash shop item stores, buy power, eat babies, and summon Baphomet way that current video game execs are involved in, though Hasbro obviously are looking to go down that road. They just love Satan. But more in the sense that there are a wide variety of video games that people play and talk about. There's no one game that totally dominates the marketplace. I mean, people don't identify as isekai reincarnation, magic cock hobbyists. They are video gamers or masturbators when it comes to isekai reincarnation magic cock. So if we could get more of that isekai reincarnation magic cock vibe in the RPG or D&D hobby, that would be great. That's all I'm asking for. That's all I want. More isekai reincarnation magic cock. That's all we should want. More isekai reincarnation magic cock. And you put that down in the comments, people. I want to see your enthusiasm for isekai reincarnation magic cock. And yes, while there will be content creator casualties in that transformation, which really sucks, and as I say that sentence, I sound more and more like Stalin, we have to acknowledge that this is also a huge opportunity as well for creators to be on the ground floor of something new. If the marketplace is evolving in another direction, well, we can bring our audiences with us into the next phase of whatever the hell is happening with the RPG market. So I've always been advocating for different games, more diverse games. To be honest, transitioning games from just D&D to RPG overall, that shouldn't be too hard for many D&D focused creators, because lots of the upcoming and popular indie games that have been blowing the up recently are, in many cases, to be honest, simply a flavor of Dungeons and Dragons, but with the massive upside of being independent of a corporate overlord like Hasbro. And the nice thing about that is D&D content will therefore still be applicable to those games. For example, there's Level Up, Tales from the Valley, DC-20. These are all flavors of D&D. Shadow Dark is huge now as well, of course, but it's a super simple system. And we're approaching a place that reminds me of back in the day when Pathfinder, 3.5 was more popular than Dungeons and Dragons. And sure, that wasn't great for Hasbro or Dungeons and Dragons, but it sure as shit didn't hurt the hobby. I joined during that time. It was amazing for the hobby, right? So good news, bad news. I would advise other content creators to start looking at some other upcoming RPGs like Daggerheart, Draw Steel, and more. Put some feelers out. Think about diversifying, because the hobby is changing big time, and we just have to kind of keep up with that. And it does really suck, and it's a really hard thing to do, but we have to. Regardless though, this job is really hard, and creators will definitely need your support going forward, myself included. And that can be on Patreon, YouTube, DriveThruRPG. If you like someone's content, help them out, because this whole gig economy is not great, especially when you take a loan out with the IRA. Those guys really aren't kidding around about money. Oh, no. So massive thanks to my patrons, especially CryptoKev. And if I do disappear, by the way, just FYI, it was either Big Jim or the Pinkertons. One of those two. And I'll hopefully catch y'all next time. Bye-bye.